The moment I remember most clearly isn't the crash. It's the silence right after. 2 or 3 full seconds where the entire rehearsal dinner froze. 50 people with their champagne glasses suspended midair. The string quartet cutting off so abruptly I could hear the bow still trembling against the string ends. And then my mother's voice, perfectly composed, cutting through all of it. She slipped. She's fine. Someone get a towel. I had not slipped. I had been shoved. I was on the marble floor of a private event room at the Scottsdale Biltmore, surrounded by shattered crystal, bleeding from both forearms and the back of my right hand, looking up at a coffered ceiling that probably cost more per square foot than my first car. My father was 2 feet away, straightening the cuff of his shirt. My brother had already turned his back, and my grandmother's ring, a 2.4-carat diamond set in platinum, left to me specifically, by name, in a handwritten codicil, was on Cassidy's finger on the other side of the room, catching the chandelier light the way it always had. They assumed that was the worst night of my life. It was the worst night of theirs. Before I tell you everything that came after, and I promise you, there's a lot that came after, I want to ask you something first. Where are you watching this right now? What city? What time is it where you are? Drop it in the comments below. I read every single one, and I know that sounds like something everyone says, but I mean it. Knowing you're out there, on your lunch break, or on your couch, or in your car in some parking lot, makes it easier to say all of this out loud. Go ahead and type it. I'll be here. My name is Serena. I'm 29 years old. I live in Phoenix, Arizona. I'm a senior CPA at a firm that handles estate and trust law, and I want you to hold on to that detail because it's going to matter in about 10 minutes. I grew up in Tempe, which is close enough to Phoenix to feel like the same city but far enough to feel like a different world when you're a teenager trying to picture anything beyond it. My parents, I'll call them Dolores and Spencer, had 2 kids. My brother Rylan, 4 years older than me, and me. Spencer worked HVAC, which is steady work in the desert but not always predictable work. Dolores did alterations for a dry cleaning shop for most of my childhood, picking up extra clients when things were tight, which was more often than not. I want to be careful about how I describe my parents because I've spent a long time trying to be precise about this. They were not violent people, as a general rule. They were not cruel, exactly. But they had clearly decided, sometime before I was old enough to understand that decisions were being made, that Rylan was the one who needed things, and I was the one who could handle not having them. Rylan was charming. Genuinely, also unfairly charming. The kind of person who makes you feel, while you're talking to him, like you are the most interesting thing that has happened to his day. He'd been getting away with things on the strength of that since middle school. Every time, my parents found a way to believe him. The borrowing started when I was in college. By then, I was at Arizona State on an academic scholarship and working 25 hours a week at the front desk of an apartment complex near campus. I was careful with money the way people are careful when they've watched their family not be careful, and understand intuitively what the cost is. I had a spreadsheet. I had a savings account I didn't mention to anyone. I graduated with honors and a degree in accounting. Passed the CPA exam on my first sitting, which only about half of candidates do. Was hired at my firm 9 months later, promoted twice in 3 years, and was managing my own client accounts before I turned 28. And I was sending money home the entire time, $200-300 a month. Sometimes more when my mother called sounding stretched. I paid for Rylan's car registration once, when he said he'd lose his license if it lapsed. I covered a dental procedure my father needed, and didn't have insurance for. I added my parents to my cell plan because it was cheaper than what they were separately paying, then absorbed the cost because asking them to reimburse me felt unkind given what I knew about their finances. By 26, I had saved enough for a down payment on a condo. I bought it, and afterward I sat in the parking lot of the title company crying. Not from sadness, but from the very specific weight of realizing that something I had planned and protected, and built entirely by myself, was actually real. That condo was proof. Proof that the life I had promised myself as a tired, underfunded 20-year-old was possible. Then, there was my grandmother's ring. Grandma Ruth was my mother's mother, and she was a woman who did not waste words or sentiment. She gardened, she read mysteries, she had a very specific opinion about most things, which she would share once and never repeat. 3 weeks before she died, she sat me down at her kitchen table and told me she was leaving me her engagement ring. She said it clearly, without ceremony. The ring goes to you, Serena, not to your mother, not to your brother, to you. She looked at me and said, "You're the only one I trust to keep it." I had the ring appraised the following spring. 2.4 carats, round brilliant cut, platinum setting, original 1960s craftsmanship. The appraiser valued it between $20,000 and $24,000, depending on the market. I insured it under my homeowner's policy that same week. A personal articles writer, which is standard for jewelry of that value, I put it in a ring box inside a fireproof document safe, bolted to the wall of my bedroom closet. I wore it on evenings when the occasion felt right. Then I put it away. My grandmother had known, before I did, exactly which one of us would take care of it. Last August, Rylan got engaged to a woman named Cassidy. Cassidy's family owns a group of luxury car dealerships across the East Valley: Scottsdale, Chandler, Gilbert, and they occupy that particular category of wealthy, where everything is tasteful and nothing has a visible price tag, which somehow makes the price tag feel larger. Rylan, who at 33 had no retirement savings, and still occasionally asked our parents for grocery money, was absolutely determined not to look like what he was in front of her family. I watched him during the small dinner Dolores organized to celebrate the engagement, and I thought, whatever else you can say about my brother, he has always known how to become whoever the room needs him to be. My mother called me 6 weeks before the rehearsal dinner. The call began with how I was doing, how work was going, and I remember noticing, partway through, that she was being almost unusually careful with the warmth of it. Then she said she had a small favor to ask. Cassidy had seen a photo from a Christmas dinner 2 years ago, where I was wearing Grandma Ruth's ring, and had mentioned how beautiful it was. Rylan was having engagement photos taken the following weekend. Would it mean something? Would it be special? If Cassidy could wear it just for the shoot, one afternoon, she'd have it back to me well before the rehearsal dinner, which was 6 weeks out. I hesitated. Something in the framing felt too smooth. But I told myself I was being paranoid. She said, "It's just sitting in your safe," which was true. She said, Grandma Ruth would have loved Cassidy, which was almost certainly not true, but I let it pass. I said yes. I took the ring from the safe and gave it to her the following Saturday. 6 weeks went by. I texted my mother the week before the rehearsal dinner asking when I could pick up the ring. She said Rylan would bring it to the dinner. I texted 3 days before. She said of course, not to worry. I texted the morning of the dinner. She said, Rylan has it, he'll be there. I put on a dress and drove to the Biltmore, telling myself it would be fine. I spotted Cassidy within 10 minutes of arriving. She was standing near the bar with her mother, holding a glass of white wine, laughing at something. Her left hand was at her side. Grandma Ruth's ring was on her finger. Not tucked away for safekeeping, not borrowed for one afternoon of photos. On her hand, resized, catching the light of 8 crystal chandeliers, worn the way you wear something that's yours. I found my mother at the head table, adjusting a place card that didn't need adjusting. When she saw my expression, she went very still. I said quietly, Mom, that ring is on Cassidy's hand. She said, without looking at me, Rylan wanted to do something meaningful, something connected to the family. That ring is not Rylan's to give. Serena. It is in my name on an insurance policy. I have the documentation. I want it back. My brother appeared. He had that expression he'd always gotten when cornered. Pleasant on the surface, calculating underneath. He glanced toward Cassidy's father, who was standing 20 feet away with a scotch in his hand, reading our body language the way wealthy people do when they sense a situation forming. Rylan said low and easy, Can we not do this right now? It's a party. Give me the ring, or I will call the police. He shrugged. He actually shrugged with a small theatrical bewilderment, and said, It's always been a family ring, V. I don't know why you're making this about ownership. Spencer appeared at my left side. What happened next took under 5 seconds. I know the exact duration because someone's phone captured it, and I have since watched it many times. My father grabbed my shoulders with both hands, turned me away from Rylan, and pushed the full weight of his arms behind it. I stumbled backward 3 steps and collided with the drink cart. A rolling cart arranged with champagne flutes 3 rows deep, and the whole thing went sideways. I went down with it. The sound the crystal made when it hit the marble is something I don't want to try to reproduce. I was on the floor. Glass everywhere. Small, bright pieces catching the light from 8 different directions. I put my hands down to push myself up, and that's when I understood the situation on my forearms. Both of them opened on the same glass at the same moment, the back of my right hand where I'd caught the edge of the cart frame on the way down. The room had gone completely silent. One person moved. My cousin Phoebe, who I hadn't even realized was nearby, was on her knees next to me in under 10 seconds with cocktail napkins pressed to my forearm. Everyone else stood. Cassie took a step back toward Rylan, instinctively, keeping the ring away from the mess. My mother told the room I had slipped and began redirecting people to their tables, in a voice that was calm in the specific way of someone who has prepared for this moment. My father handed his jacket to a passing server and stepped to the side, as though offloading the jacket was the most pressing task available. Nathan was on the 101 when Phoebe called him. He had been stuck behind a highway accident for 40 minutes, texting me updates since 6:15, and was about a mile out when his phone rang. He told me later that Phoebe was very calm on the phone, which scared him more than if she had been crying. He came through the entrance doors 8 minutes later with 2 paramedics he'd called on the way. He crossed the room directly, crouched down next to me, held my face in both hands for a moment without speaking. Then he stood up. Nathan is a senior architect at a cybersecurity firm that works primarily with insurance carriers and financial institutions. He builds systems that store and authenticate digital documentation. What he did next was not improvised. It was simply him knowing exactly what he had and where it was. He took out his phone. He walked to my father. He held up the screen, which showed my homeowner's insurance policy, the personal articles rider, the ring's item description, the appraised value, the policy number, all of it pulled from our shared cloud storage in the car on the way over. He said, "I need you to understand something before you say a single word to those officers. That ring is insured personal property under a policy in my wife's name. Removing it from her residence under false pretenses and presenting it as a gift to a third party, without her documented consent, is theft. In Arizona, property appraised between $20,000 and $24,000 makes this a Class 3 felony." He looked up from the phone and scanned the room slowly, and right now I count at least 4 phones that have been out since this happened. "So whatever story you're planning to tell, I would think very carefully about whether it holds up against video from 4 different angles." Spencer looked at him. Then he looked at me. Then he looked at the crown molding on the far wall, as though the answer was somewhere in the architecture. The paramedics took me to the ER. 6 stitches on my right hand, both forearms cleaned and bandaged. The attending physician documented the lacerations in full and asked gently whether I wanted to speak with a patient advocate. I told him I was a CPA who specialized in estate law and I had some calls to make first. Nathan's attorneys filed a civil evidence preservation notice before midnight, covering all digital recordings at or associated with the Biltmore's systems that evening. The venue's security infrastructure, updated 2 years prior with cloud-backed storage, had the drink cart incident documented from 2 angles, time-stamped. Phoebe, it turned out, had started recording on her phone the moment I asked Ryland for the ring back, because, as she told me later, she had seen enough of my family over the years to know she might need it. A friend of Cassidy's family had been filming a slow video of the room for Instagram and had caught the cart going over from across the room. I filed a police report from my hospital bed. I called my homeowner's insurance company and reported the ring as stolen. The claim number went into a folder Nathan, labeled with the date, and kept in our shared drive. Spencer was charged with assault resulting in physical injury. The ER documentation, lacerations requiring sutures, formally recorded, supported the charge. His attorney, once he reviewed the footage, was not enthusiastic about trial. Spencer received supervised probation, a fine, mandatory counseling, and a no-contact order. Ryland was charged with Class 4 felony theft. The jeweler who had resized the ring, when contacted by the detective, confirmed that Ryland had brought it in 6 weeks prior, paid cash for the resizing, and provided no documentation of ownership. The detective noted in his report that the resizing had been completed before Cassidy's family was even told about the ring, which suggested the transfer had been planned. Before the ring was ever removed from my safe, Cassidy's father retained an attorney and made a call. The ring arrived back in a FedEx box inside of 10 days. No note. The engagement was quietly ended the following month. I was told, through Phoebe, that Ryland cried when Cassidy ended it. I don't doubt that. My mother was not charged. That is the part I keep returning to. She made the call. She asked to borrow the ring. She let 6 weeks pass knowing exactly what was happening with it. She told 50 people I had slipped while I was bleeding on the floor. She was not charged because no single statute fit cleanly to what she had done, and my attorney was honest with me that a civil case against her would be long and uncertain. So she walked. I thought about that for a long time. I still think about it. What I did was stop. I stopped paying my parents' car insurance. Both vehicles, the $187 a month I had been covering for 4 years without being asked to start, and without being thanked for continuing. I called Verizon and had them removed from my account. The storage unit where Ryland kept furniture and equipment he hadn't touched in 2 years. $89 a month on my card. I surrendered the lease and notified the facility. They sent him a certified letter. What happened to his things after that was not my concern. They'd had a safety net for years. It had been made of me. I folded it up. Ryland's case went to a bench trial in the spring. He lost. Sentenced in April. Felony conviction, probation, restitution, a record that will follow him through every background check and professional license application he ever files. Spencer's plea was finalized in March. I watched the sentencing on the court's live stream from my home office. I had Grandma Ruth's ring on the chain around my neck because I hadn't yet decided if I was ready to wear it on my hand again. I'm still deciding. Some days I think I will. Other days I think I'd rather keep it close, where I can feel it without having to explain it to anyone. My grandmother was a practical woman who left it to me, because she knew, before I did, which one of us would protect it. When it was over, I closed the browser. I sat at my desk for a few minutes. Outside, Phoenix was doing what Phoenix does in April, bright and dry and completely indifferent. And nothing in the city had changed, and everything in me had. I want to ask you something before you go, and I mean this sincerely. My mother, she did not put her hands on me. She did not authorize the resizing. She did not lie to the detective directly, but she made the phone call. She borrowed the ring under a pretense she knew was false. She let 6 weeks pass in silence. She stood over me on the floor of the Biltmore and told a room full of people that I had slipped. She chose something over her daughter, and she knew what she was choosing when she made that call. Do you think she got away with something? Do you think there is a kind of harm that just never gets a name, a charge, a sentence? And what do you do with that? Tell me in the comments. I read everyone. And if this story meant something to you, if you have ever been the one in your family who holds the line and covers the bills and gives things away, because someone used the word family, like it was a reason that cancels every other reason, please subscribe. New stories go up every week. You are not alone in this. Stay safe and hold on to what is actually yours.